Black Adam introduced a number of new additions to the DCEU that weren't incredibly well known to non-comic readers previously. Black Adam, Sabbac, the Nation of Kahndaq, the Justice Society, and it fails to make the audience care about any of them. The early warning signs for this show themselves as soon as the opening scene when we learn the backstory of Black Adam. We learn that Black Adam was a slave in ancient times when Kahndaq was ruled by a tyrannical king. The king wanted to use the crown of Sabbac to become all-powerful, and Black Adam was given the powers of Shazam and stopped him, but then he and the crown both vanished. That's a lot to take in, and it's all necessary information that the viewer needs to know to understand the central conflict of the movie. So naturally the film would want to convey it all in a way that gets the audience invested and, you know, doesn't feel like they're being shoveled meaningless ramblings that they have no reason to care about. Lucky for us, all this info is delivered in everyone's favorite way to start a movie, a 6-minute long exposition dump.
The first self-governing people on Earth, Kahndaq was a center of power and enlightenment. Using the army to seize power, Acton became a tyrant, but he had even darker ambitions. To make the crown, he needed Eternium, a rare mineral of magic properties found only in Kahndaq. In the ensuing battle, the palace was destroyed, but the champion was victorious.
Dude, that's cool and all, and I'm happy for you, but I'm not watching all that.
Almost no exploration of Black Adam as a character, what Kahndaq was like before or during the King's oppression, what that oppression was like for Adam personally, or anything that would make Adam a relatable character or Kahndaq a believable world. Instead, the story is just being pushed at us in the most cold and impersonal way, which doesn't actually prove anything it's saying by showing it, but rather just expects you to take their word for it. This is poison for characterization and world building. Just a thought, but if you have to lecture your audience on several plot elements before you start a story, that probably means those elements aren't integrated well into the story. I'm not saying that you can't start a movie by prioritizing backstory over character, because it can be done quite well. The opening scene to the first episode of Avatar: The Last Airbender is a good example. That is also just filling in backstory for later.
My grandmother used to tell me stories about the old days. A time of peace. Only the Avatar mastered all 4 elements. Only he could stop the ruthless firebenders.
But it works because of one simple reason. It's intriguing. It doesn't give the audience the entire backstory, it just gives you enough context to begin the story, but keeps it vague enough that we're hooked and want to learn more.
But when the world needed him most, he vanished.
Not to mention, the fact that Avatar doesn't tell you everything right away means that the opening narration is short. It doesn't go on for 6 minutes while we wait for the actual story to start. Black Adam, on the other hand, is more concerned with just making sure you know the backstory without any consideration for why we should want to know. And when we transition into the present, the main plot doesn't fare much better. We see that modern-day Kahndaq is under an oppression of its own from the criminal syndicate Intergang, but the movie pays almost zero attention to what that means in practice beyond, again, just flatly telling us without proving it.
Sent here to steal my country's natural resources, strip mine our sacred lands, pollute our water, oppress our heritage.
We see a little bit of what the Syndicate is capable of, like how they're after the crown of Sabbac for themselves and are willing to kill the main characters for standing in their way, but we don't get much information on what they plan to do with that power, and the worst we see of their invasion of Kahndaq and how it affects the lives of its citizens is that they have to wait in lines. Oh, the barbarity. The movie tries to make a big deal out of how Black Adam's fight against Intergang results in Kahndaq's people reclaiming control.
Because he is not a hero.
Tell that to all the people he just liberated.
But since we don't have any idea about what liberating Kahndaq actually means or how its citizens' lives would be changed for it, it doesn't feel like Adam's actions have any perceivable effect. Speaking of Adam, and to give the movie a little bit of credit, his introduction where he fights off a squad of Intergang soldiers actually demonstrates an understanding of conveying a character through their actions. Epilepsy warning, by the way. Skip to the time on screen if you're concerned about that. I'll leave this part of the script in the description in case you can't watch it. We see him effortlessly zip around the room, completely unaffected by any attacks thrown at him, which tells us that he's powerful and borderline unstoppable. We see him punch the soldiers across the room and electrocute them to death, which tells us that he's brutal and merciless. And yet we also see him save one of the main characters from being killed, which tells us that he's compassionate and willing to help those who aren't his enemies. And they convey all of that not through a monologue.
Who the hell is that?
You wouldn't believe me if I told you.
But get this. by actually showing it. In fact, the lack of dialogue in this scene even helps us to get to know him. It shows that no matter who he's interacting with, whether it be an enemy or someone he's willing to protect, he's very no-nonsense and emotionally closed off. All of this is great, and for a few minutes the movie actually feels like...
And... action! Whoa.
But then for the rest of the story, Adam's writing quickly takes us back to...
This is bullshit, take one?
For the rest of the movie, Black Adam has all the charisma of a rock. And I'm not talking about the Rock that the filmmakers wanted. I understand that he's supposed to be a brooding and stoic character, but he just comes off as so one note and like nothing has any kind of emotional impact on him. There are barely any moments where he shows deep sadness or anger or levity or optimism or fear or anything that would make him a three-dimensional character. He mostly just has the same underplayed reaction to everything around him, even in situations where you would think you would get a stronger emotion out of him.
I don't know this place.
This is your home.
Then my home is gone.
On top of that, he doesn't really have much of an arc. Like I said, there isn't really any reason for the audience to care about him liberating Kahndaq, but the movie doesn't even do a good job of establishing why he cares. After he's been introduced, he initially doesn't want any part in the conflict.
You don't feel any loyalty to us at all?
Not really, no.
But he changes his mind almost immediately. The idea is that he agrees to help overthrow Endergang in order to save the other main characters like Adriana, Kareem, and Amon, but at this point the movie has done very little to establish a connection between them. He doesn't show any kind of companionship with them, at least none that feel like they develop naturally.
You definitely need a catchphrase. I was thinking like, tell them the man in black sent you.
I don't waste words on the dead.
12 seconds later.
Tell them the men in black sent you.
Yes.
And not only do these characters not have much chemistry with Black Adam, but they're not that interesting in their own right either. Once again, their roles in the story tie back into the oppression that Endergang imposes on Kahndaq, but if we don't see it or learn much about it, it doesn't amount to anything. The only one of them who has anything resembling a bond with Adam is Amon because of how he admires superheroes.
So you can really fly and stop bullets because that's really crucial in my plan. And is it really you stopping the bullets or is it the suit? Wait, what's your top speed?
But he's basically just Freddy from Shazam, but without the deeper aspects that made him a good character. Freddy's love of superheroes wasn't just a surface level trait, it tied back into the struggles he faced in his life, like his disability and the fact that he was bullied. He was interested in heroes because he liked the idea of their physical ability and kindness. Amon's writing attempts to go for something similar with how he's lived his whole life under Endergang's oppression, but, to reuse my point about that a few seconds ago, if we don't see it or learn much about it, it doesn't amount to anything. Work smarter, not harder. As for the movie's villain, we get Sabak, the leader of the Kahndaq division of Endergang who wants to find the crown of Sabak to gain its powers. He really sucks. I honestly don't remember the last time I saw a villain whose motivation was this glossed over. It's explained that the reason he wants the crown is that he's actually the descendant of the tyrannical king from millennia ago and he wants to reclaim the throne to Kahndaq. But much like the other characters, he's not given any backstory on why he cares. He says that the truth about his ancestry was passed down in his family generation by generation, I guess to indicate that he saw it as his destiny and that's why he's as determined as he is. But the movie doesn't explore this at all because it's only talked about for like half a minute and then the plot continues on its merry way. For the entire movie before that, and honestly even after, Sabak's entire character is just, he's the bad guy, and he wants power because he's the bad guy. There's also another set of heroes present in the form of the Justice Society, consisting of Dr. Fate, Hawkman, Cyclone, and Atom Smasher.
Here we go. If I concentrate just right, we'll be exactly where I want to be. Oh no! How did we end up here?
Yeah, they're pretty underdeveloped too. Cyclone and Atom Smasher might as well not even be there. They add nothing to the plot and don't really have any depth in their own right. They have a couple of scenes together where they sort of develop a friendship, but it never goes any further than a few compliments before the movie promptly forgets about them for the 10th time and moves on. Dr. Fate, or as I like to call him, boring Doctor Strange, isn't as superfluous, but his personality is pretty bland and he still isn't given much attention. Pretty much every aspect of his character is something that just gets casually mentioned mentioned and never brought up again.
That helmet is from another planet. It's millions of years old. It chooses who it lets touch it. Kent is literally possessed when he puts it on.
But what led him to finding that power in the first place? What makes him worthy? How does the possession affect him as a character? We never find out. It's the same problem as with Black Adam's backstory. The movie is more concerned about just making sure that you know these characters rather than why any of it matters. Although in Dr. Fate's case, they barely even did that. Hawkman isn't a particularly strong character either, but he has pretty much the only ideological conflict with Black Adam that gets any attention. Initially, Hawkman sees Adam as a potential threat to the world due to how powerful and deadly he is, and their ability to coexist develops over the course of the movie. Initially, Hawkman and the rest of the Justice Society try to get Black Adam to surrender.
We're here to negotiate the terms of your peaceful surrender.
I'm not peaceful, nor do I surrender.
Before eventually agreeing to work with him to overthrow Intergang. And that presents its own conflict where the peacekeeping Hawkman is now having to work with a man who kills his enemies without hesitation.
Heroes don't kill people.
Well, I do.
And eventually they come to a compromise where the Justice Society all agree to leave Adam alone because he demonstrates that he's not a threat to the world as a whole. But that comes with the biggest problem with the movie. The fact that from beginning to end, Black Adam doesn't really change all that much as a character. He starts the movie as a brutal killing machine who helps people in need, and by the end, he's still a brutal killing machine who helps people in need. The movie sprinkles in aspects of a character arc, but by the end, he's still the same character he always was. Like for example, just before the climax, Black Adam accidentally injures Amon and then surrenders to the Justice Society out of guilt. But then when he comes back at the end of the movie to fight Sabak, it's not because he's reflected on his actions throughout the movie or grown as a person, it's basically just because he's the only one who can save the world.
You are the only one who can defeat the demon champion. We were wrong about you. The world doesn't always need a white knight.
In other words, Black Adam's big revelation and the culmination of his entire character arc is that he was basically fine to begin with. How compelling. Just a thought for how they could have had him develop. What if they played more into the idea of him opening up to other people and his moral code changes based on that? Like, maybe at the beginning of the film he could see himself as more of a lone wolf who just assumes that he knows best for the world because he has the power and ruthlessness to enforce it.
Force is always necessary.
That would make sense for him in the beginning, especially considering he's distant from other people, so wouldn't be as likely to listen to other people's perspectives. Then throughout the movie, he learns to work with others, and they slowly convince him that different levels of force are appropriate in different situations. Like, he learns that certain extreme problems require lethal force, but others don't. That way, by the end of the film, Adam would have actually grown, and there would have been a noticeable difference in the way that he operates. But that's not the film that we got. I'll be honest, the first time I saw this movie, I actually somewhat enjoyed it. Oh, don't get me wrong, I knew it wasn't good, but I thought it was at least entertaining enough that I was glad I saw it. But looking at the movie again, that enthusiasm was about as short-lived as Henry Cavill's return as Superman. Which, speaking of that, why does the movie still use the Christopher Reeve Superman theme?
Black Adam.
I get that it's iconic, but Henry Cavill's Superman has his own theme song, and it's a perfectly good one. The Christopher Reeves theme has nothing to do with this version of the character. Did DC not learn its lesson after Justice League?
Well, I believe in truth. But I'm also a big fan of justice.
Regardless, I went into this video thinking that I could give at least a slightly more positive take on the movie than what most people have given it, but whatever I saw in the movie for the first time around just doesn't seem to work for me anymore. It's not horrible, but I can't exactly call it good or even enjoyable like I used to. Anyway, if you enjoyed this video, then make sure to subscribe for more. Also, I've just launched a Patreon. Click the link in the description to check it out and see some bonus content. Thanks for watching.